First, put your milk kefir culture into a clean jar. Then fill up the jar to about 3/4 of its volume with the best quality milk you can find and afford. Put a lid on the jar and let it sit for 24 hours at room temperature. Jostle the jar around just a little bit during that period, maybe 4 times. If you don't get around to it, don't worry. On the next day, fill the now fermented milk, which is now kefir, into a new jar through a strainer. In the strainer, you retain the culture for the next batch. And guess what? Now you can start the process all over again with fresh milk. Additional tips. In order to pause kefir production for less than a week, put the fermented kefir with the culture into the refrigerator. In order to pause kefir production for 1 to 2 weeks, put the culture into the refrigerator in fresh milk so that when you are done, you have readily fermented kefir, because a week in the refrigerator can be likened to a day at room temperature. Pausing for longer than 2 weeks, put your culture into the freezer without milk. In order to continue using a frozen culture, just thaw it a little bit until you can dose it out of your container and give it about 25% more fermentation time for the first 2 or 3 batches until it's woken up. Where to get a culture from? If you don't have any friends or family with a milk kefir culture who can give you part of it, you can also check Facebook Marketplace. And other than that, your normal route would be to acquire one online. There are different possibilities, including Amazon. In case you have to buy your culture, you will likely get a dehydrated one. They usually come with a very good description of how to bring the dehydrated milk kefir culture back to life. If you treat your milk kefir culture well and feed it regularly, it will grow, and soon enough you will be the one who has some of the culture to give away to friends or family who are interested. Further tips. Instead of putting a lid on your jar, some people like to use a coffee filter or a piece of cloth secured by a rubber band. This is of course okay, and it allows a ferment to breathe. However, a milk kefir will be totally fine with a lid on. I also have 2 more reasons to prefer a lid. 1. You can jostle the jar around during the fermentation time without making a mess. And secondly, a lid protects the culture from cross-contamination in case you have other fermentation projects close by. Should it occur that your milk kefir culture gets contaminated by a kombucha culture anyway, you can try freezing it, because a milk kefir culture survives the freezer, while a kombucha culture usually does not. A word on buying milk for kefir fermentation. Go for organic if you can, go for grass-fed if you can. The most natural milk you can get is raw milk. Your next best choice is pasteurized milk. Only if you can't get pasteurized milk, you have no choice but use the denatured, ultra-pasteurized and homogenized milk. You should know one thing about raw milk and kefir though. Because raw milk has its own life cultures, it can be at odds with the milk kefir culture. It can even happen that a milk kefir culture dies in raw milk. For this reason, you might want to consider to apply the following strategy. Keep and grow your first milk kefir culture in quality pasteurized milk. Then, when it grew enough that you have something to spare, try it on raw milk. If it dies, you can try when you have again enough to spare, until you find a batch that works, raw milk on your milk kefir. If it starts to survive once, it will likely survive in the future and you find you're fit for raw milk. Why you should likely not go for a store-bought milk kefir? The reason is that a commercial product usually is not a natural product. That said, if you can find a product that consists of two ingredients, pasteurized milk and the kefir culture, it's a good product, it's quite natural. Kudos to the producer. However, most milk kefir products that you can find in the shop will be either not natural, like this, or even questionable, like this one. All the flavored kefir products of this brand do not even contain fruit or vanilla, depending on the flavor. It's always natural flavor. What that means is anybody's guess. It may be that it is a legit extract from the fruit in question. It could also be some kind of mold bred by the food industry, producing the flavor of some fruit. What's worse is that the second ingredient in those is cane sugar, which is refined sugar. The natural flavor kefir of that brand contains 9 grams of carbs per cup, while the flavored ones contain 18 grams of carbs per cup. You can do the math here, that means 9 grams of refined sugar is added per cup. Those are a little bit more than 2 teaspoons. That means 4 cups in the bottle, about 9 teaspoons added refined sugar per bottle. Hardly a healthy choice, but let's not compare apples and oranges here, right? I showed you how to make a natural flavor kefir at home, so let's just compare it with the natural flavored one of the brand. First of all, they use organic milk. That is good. Secondly, they use low-fat and non-fat milk. It makes it less delicious, but also it is just not natural. Pectin appears to be a natural product. However, the way it is produced turns it into an unnatural one. The process includes mixing it with water and an acid, for example hydrochloric acid. Later, the food industry adds ethanol or isopropanol to the pectin solution. How is vitamin A palmitate produced? Step 1. Hydrolyzing vitamin A acetate by using an alkali solution with an organic solvent as a co-solvent to generate vitamin A alcohol. Step 2. Extracting the vitamin A alcohol by using an organic solvent, washing the obtained extract liquid with water to remove the co-solvent, reacting with palmitic acid and reacting the vitamin A alcohol with the palmitic acid in a non-aqueous system under the catalysis of immobilized lipase to generate the vitamin A palmitate. The vitamin A palmitate is later synthesized through esterification. Sounds like very natural food, right? This is not a health channel, this is a natural food channel. I don't make any health claims, I only apply the great-great-great-grandmother test. Maybe your great-great-great-grandmother played around with isopropanol and esterification in the kitchen. Mine did not. The vitamin D3 is usually produced by irradiation of 7-dehydrocholesterol from lanolin, obtained from the wool of sheep. I suppose it can be good for you, especially if you're deficient, but is it natural? It doesn't sound like natural food. So finally, the cultures are of course perfect. You cannot have kefir without the cultures. This one is good. So conclusion, If you can find a kefir product that is only milk and cultures, go for it. If you can only find a product like the one reviewed here, well, make your own at home. But again, this is not a health channel, it's a natural food channel. I'm not making any health claims. To naturalize our food, I would suggest the following premise. Only use the food that would have existed in kitchens around the world hundreds of years ago. Additionally, cancel out commercial alcohol, cancel out seed oils, and cancel out refined sugar that is not fermented. Also ferment dairy and grains as far as it makes sense. Also remove everything that may make you addicted, and that in order to play by the naturalizer rules. But I don't say play by the naturalizer rules 100% of the time, just be a little conscious of it. So according to those rules, I basically naturalized a commercial kefir product and showed you how to make it at home. Let me know in the comments below, do you want me to naturalize any commercial product or recipe? Because the food industry would have you believe that food can only be really delicious if there's all kinds of garbage added. But it is not so. Thinking about that store-bought kefir we looked at though, man, we can do better than that to naturalize our food.